We'll call this meeting to order, please. All right, there we go. Do a roll call. We got Chris Beecher, present. Derek Washington Moore.
Present.
Carrie Elbagay.
Present.
Frankie Seeley.
Here.
All right. You have everybody present. That is quorum, and we'll go ahead and start this meeting. Mr. Joe, please have you do the opening prayer.
Sure. Lola san mujeres que se trabajan. No do ledo di hari ani di oskari ko. Zastigis in the cloth ad ko. Anna bekayat khad ad khat ko. Khabliya don kitn ido tarsa sin mujin bi kli khabliya don shinka. Ni jai no ni nas ko. Da williya do da kulli sin do sti ko. Jishi ko ni karta ti amshtallo ti chenlo. Ina ani dan lo. الشيء اللي يقول كمشي هو صحيح كليد لكم يا بيو صحيح كليد هنا أهمين يكون دابو هاوزين تولي كم بس كي ناني ميل تولي كم نادا دو نسي كم بكه نادا هو يزنه تولي كم خاوليا كم خاجي باو يا بيو كم ما يتا يكنا إسعاد تولي كم تلاقوت زاد تولي كم بيناس نهار تستو تولي كم هو أنت كيد دل ناتاس تولي كي نت ليني كم Badi nedo kombayeli ki. Ni habe ke heroin lado, large na khain zilo ki kidi khoi zilo. Ni large deal trada kidi deal trada bujon do so nas lane.
Thank you very much. Staff, do the announcements before we get started.
This week, we have annual meeting. We have several dignitaries coming in with the RDC. We have the honor of actually having Mr. Richie, Chairman Richie, presenting at the meeting during the opening remarks. So we have President May, the President is presenting the closing remarks. We're going to have a good week here, updating everybody and giving information that's needed for activities for housing.
Thank you very much. We'd like to recognize some guest and visiting officials. Looks like we've got here today with us from the U.S. Census, Mr. Arvin Mitchell. We'd like to say thank you for joining us. We also have Mr. John Ernie from the USDA. I'd like to say thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to your presentations. If I could get a motion to review and adopt the agenda, please.
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a motion by Commissioner Lee, seconded by Commissioner Begay to review and adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. I'm going to review and adopt the minutes. The minutes have been previously distributed. If I can get a motion to review and adopt.
Motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a motion by Commissioner Lee, seconded by Madam Vice Chair to review and adopt the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. And on to item number 5 for NHA reports. If I can get a motion to review the reports.
Motion.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
This is a motion by Madam Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Begay to review the NHA report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Before I turn it over to staff, you can introduce Mr. Mitchell.
Chair and Commissioners, we have before you Mr. Arthur Mitchell. He's with the U.S. Census Bureau, and Mr. Mitchell is actually is the lead person conducting or coordinating and strategizing how we're going to roll out the collecting of data for the Navajo Nation. We've worked with Mr. Mitchell's office with NHA to look at how we're going to assist with having our clients and our people who live in those communities contribute, because these the housing counts with people on a reservation is real critical funding sources for the Navajo Nation. So why not having housing authority with us having over 7,000 units to contribute to those with the household disposition. So what he'll be presenting here is the roadmap of the 2020 census and how his office and NHA is going to work together with the Navajo Nation to acquire those important information of demographics on Navajo Nation.
Thank you. Good morning. That's it, Ben. I appreciate for giving me this time to do a presentation in form of introduction. My name is Arvin Mitchell. Currently, I'm the Tribal Partnership Specialist for the Bureau of Census. And my presentation here, which was also covered in the remarks here a while ago. I call it Road to Census, 2020 Census. And I've been doing presentation to Navajo leadership at the central level, at the agency level. I'm taking it down to the chapter level. And in between, I want to capture as many boards and commissions within the Navajo Nation. So as me covering the Navajo Nation as a partnership specialist, just to cover some of the basics on what census is. As we go further, there's details that we need to cover. But because of time here and you have other folks on the agenda, I'll cover it within the allotted time that was given to me. So as road to 2020 census, like I said, as Navajo, we need to get on this same road. As a government, as an organization, as a people at the local level. Because it's very important. It's very important that we get an accurate count. So pretty soon I'll cover why we need an accurate count. I believe you also have the presentation in your handouts over there. So I'll cover it real quick. An overview, purpose of the decennial, the confidentiality, some key dates, type of question, ways to respond to the questionnaire, what's on the questionnaire, make your next job, what to expect when you apply for census, and then Navajo Nation, where we're at in terms of census, and then the tribal geography, Navajo Nation 2010 profile, and then the closing, the last two slides. So those will be what will be covered. Now, the purpose of census. The purpose of census. It all started back in 1790, so that's like over 200 years ago. So that's why we're in 2020. We're getting ready for 2020. So in the Constitution, in the first block again, Article 1, Section 2, it stated that we'll do this every 10 years. So So one of the main reasons is to redraw congressional district, also to draw state districts, and any districts that uses population to elect leadership. So So for Arizona, New Mexico, we have congressional seats, especially in Arizona. We have, I think, a congressional seat number 7. So because of population, Arizona back in 2000 gained 1 additional seat. Back in 2010, they gained another seat. So because of population, Arizona gained the 2 seats within the last 2 counts. So that's one of the reasons that we have census every 10 years, is to have equal representation. Although the second one is our fair share, 790 billion is released from the United States every year. 675 billion. That's over $1 trillion. It goes to the state, goes to other governmental agencies. That goes to folks that apply for grants. So that's how much it gets released every year. And a lot of these money that gets released, some of them are based on population formula. I believe Navajo has a population formula in there. Although there's a lot of money that comes to Navajo. Some of them goes to the state, like food stamp, and then goes back out to Indian country. So a lot comes our way in terms of monies. So a lot of money gets released on a yearly basis. Although, a lot of these counts, based on the count, we use the data. So any time that you apply for a grant, the first thing is, where's your data? Where's your data that will support your grant? So the 675 billion that I'm talking about, usually when you apply for a grant, they'll ask you for data. So if you don't have a good count, your data isn't supporting your request. So in short, it's all about power and money. Power meaning that, we elect leadership. Money meaning that we get monies based on count. So even that a lot of times I always say, we elect leadership. They go to DC, and then they'll say, I came here on behalf of 300,000 plus Navajos. So that number carries a lot of weight. The number carries a lot of weight in DC. Just an example is last week there was a congressional hearing on census. And if you have the numbers, everything is focused on you. So a number of questions came up is, what are you doing for Navajo? How's Navajo doing? How's Navajo doing? How are you helping Navajo? So you get that concentration, if you have the numbers. So so that's the purpose of census. And everything is confidentiality. A lot of times, I've worked back in 2000 census as a manager. So when you knock on the door, getting your questionnaire, a lot of folks, they mistrust government or mistrust organizations. So even any question, is it going to be released to anybody? That's probably one of the things that they worry about. So with this confidentiality, it's covered under Title 13 of the United States Code. So there's a penalty if you release any information. There's a penalty of 5 years imprisonment and $250,000 fine. So I don't think anybody that I know of that has breached that confidentiality. So anything that we collect, it's confidentiality. And then the timeline, when does it start? So right now, I've been on board since the last week of November. So what I've been doing right now is establishing partnership. And the main operation for Indian country is going to happen in March, mid-March of 2020. So between now and then, we're doing a lot of outreach, education, and then awareness to mainly the government. As we're doing that, eventually we can get to the local people. But before we get to March 2020, we need to do a lot of recruitment. And we need to hire probably close to 1,000 folks that will do our enumeration on Navajo. So we need to do a lot of recruitment, people getting into the system. I'll get to it further down the slide. So right now, we'll be getting into recruitment. Within a couple of weeks, you'll probably hear that there's operation outside. Like Phoenix will have an operation, Gallup, Farmington, Flagstaff. Those are towns that have street addresses that gets their mail delivered by street addresses. So they're going to be doing an address canvassing operation where they will be verifying addresses with the housing unit. So they'll be doing it within a couple of weeks. So then they'll be outside Navajo. Since Navajo Indian country, we don't get our mail delivered. We're further down the operation. But since a lot of Navajos live off the reservation, we need to let them know that this is happening. So those are some key timelines for census. And then the type of operation, like I stated, mid-March, we'll be doing the update leave enumeration method. But before that, we'll be doing group quarters, correctional facilities, and nursing homes. That'll be probably in late January and February. That's when we'll be doing it. So the update leave, what's an update leave? We used to do update enumerate since 1990, 2000, and then 2010. But to cut down on costs, we're going to do an update leave. So what that is that mid-March we'll deliver a questionnaire. At the same time, we'll be updating the addresses. So in this case, NHA, folks that live at NHA will knock on their door. We'll leave a questionnaire and say, here's your questionnaire. And then we'll get an address, probably a housing number, to that housing unit. We'll leave that questionnaire. And then we'll say, okay, you have 3 ways to respond. Here's your questionnaire. You can do it online by the internet. Or you can phone it in. Or the last one is that you can send that packet that we gave you. So they have 3 options to respond to the questionnaire. So going back to that timeline, the previous slide, probably in May, late May and June. If we census haven't gotten that questionnaire back, they'll be sent we'll drop off a postcard at that address. Saying here's a postcard, you haven't submitted your questionnaire yet. And then another postcard maybe a week after that. So if there's no response, then probably in late June or early July, there'll be a knock on the door again, say we still haven't received your questionnaire yet. So then we'll help them do the questionnaire. But if nobody answers the door for probably 4 or 6 times, I don't remember what the exact number is, then we'll ask the neighbor. They'll ask the neighbor, saying that, okay, who lives next door? You know how many people live next door. So, but we want an accurate count. But if we start asking the neighbor how many people live in there, over there, that we're getting away from what we want to do. So that's the new method. Update, enumerate. So non-response is that we'll knock on the door and gather the questionnaire. So I just covered all of the 4 ways of response: the internet, phone, respond by mail, and then in-person interview. At the last step, we'll get an interview. And then these are the 6 questions. 7 questions on the questionnaire. We did away with the long forms, although the decennial is all about short forms. So these are the questions. As you can see, 2, 4, 5th one down, owned and rent at home. We capture data is captured within Navajo on how many folks rent a home, and then how many folks own a home. And then also in the data, it'll show that there's vacant houses, vacant homes. So because of NHA, I know that previously, if there's a lot of vacant homes sitting out here, and if you go to DC and say, oh, I need some more money, but yet, you have so many thousand vacant homes. So back in 2000, that was an issue. Because a lot of homes out here are used for ceremonial, or, you can't live in that house because of one reason or another. But because how rules were written, if there's a house, you have to count it. But during that time, we said, no, we have a lot of houses that we use for ceremonial. So they changed the rule. That way, it doesn't show that Navajo has a lot of vacant houses out there. So, the vacancy sort of went down back in 2010. And this year, we're also going to probably do the same thing. So there's a lot of data when you look at data. Community development website. When you go to the community website, you have profile, community profile. In there, each chapter has its own profile. Each chapter has a lot of information in there. And then there's some housing information in each of those communities. So those are information from 2010, the actual number. There's what they call a ACS2. Every month there's a survey that were happening. That one replaced the long form. So those are every year there's estimate that comes out of these ACS. So I think 2017 there's an estimate. And when you look at it, there's a lot more now living off the nation. But a lot of times I don't use that estimate. We use the actual 2010 number. So these are the questions that are on the forms. Either going down to make your next job count. A lot of times, not a lot of times, but in communities at the chapter level, there's a lot of folks that want jobs that are not working. So here's an opportunity for them to help their community. So so where they can work from home, do the enumeration in their community. So in here are some of the job titles that we'll be hiring. And then these are some of the what to expect when you're applying. You know, you gotta be 18 years old, must have an email address, because a lot of these are online, application. So you gotta have an email so they can respond back to you. So those are probably the key. Plus you gotta be a US citizen and 18 years old. Auto for Navajo, where we're at in terms of Navajo. Back in September 2016, we had our tribal consultation where census from headquarters met with leadership in Winderall. And, you know, did the presentation saying that, okay, census 2020 will be here again soon. So how do you want to do your enumeration? So one of the things that we said was, which I just covered, that you need to hire Navajos. We don't want anybody from another state or another tribe or from somewhere else to be doing our enumeration. Because I understand that's what happened back in 2010. Folks from the outside was brought in to do a lot of these enumeration. Why that happens is that if you don't have a good recruitment, if you don't have recruitment within your own community, because when you're going to hire people, they'll just punch in the zip code, and then they'll have people name listed on there, and they'll hire from that area. So if you don't have a good recruitment, then they're going to bring folks in from somewhere else to do enumeration. I remember back in 2000, we had to take a lot of our enumerators outside Navajo because they were behind. And during census, there's a lot of timelines that are established, daily timelines. So if you get behind, they'll bring in folks from the outside to help you catch up. So we had that consultation back in March 30th. Now, the Key Committee approved our plan of operation. So in that plan of operation, how we're going to do Navajo. That there was a membership to this legislation too. 5 was selected by President, and then 5 was selected by the Speaker. So last week we had our 4th meeting, the commission, Navajo Nation Complete Count Commission. So they're also out there that was put together by the Navajo Nation, and making sure that we have an accurate count here on Navajo. Then the agency councils. We have 4 agency councils that pass resolution that they'll support and partner with census. And then at the chapter, there's land use plan committees. So every month, since I used to oversee community development, you know, there's committees out there that use a lot of census data, that uses a lot of geography. So they have meetings every month, land use plan committee. So those resolutions, we stated that they'll be the local complete count committee, meaning that they need to help out with awareness, educating the public, and do a lot of outreach. So we have 4 agency council that passed the resolution. Then within Navajo, you know, we all know that we're within 13 counties, 3 states, down 4 states with Colorado. So of all the counties, Arizona, all the counties board of supervisors, they passed a resolution to support census. On the New Mexico side, Gallup this week, McKinley County will be passing a resolution. San Juan passed that one. Cibola, they're coming in Thursday too. So as Navajo Complete Count Committee, as Navajo, we need to also help other agencies with their effort. Then also for Navajo, we'll be the only one that will have a local census office. There's like 50 offices within Denver region. There's like 245 offices within the United States, we have one of those offices. So that way, what we also said was that when we did our consultation is that we want our own office. We don't want anybody from other offices overseeing that. So we're gonna be responsible for the 3 satellite offices in New Mexico. And then these are some maps that we've been working on. A lot of times when we say census, it's not about just counting people. It involves math. So, there was Bondra annexation. Every year they open it up, and then you do your updates. There's an example that happened. Twin Arrows. Twin Arrows applied for opportunity grant, but because it wasn't updated in the census when they applied for that grant, they look at the map and say, well, you're not on Navajo. So we had two quick meetings last week. We started it last month. So we had these meetings, and from Denver, they went ahead and captured Twin Arrows, where we purchased the land. But of course, you have to provide documentation that you were actually on trust land, BIA, did the approval and all that. And then all the others. The last one, tribal subdivision, we did that back in 2000 because it was hard to get statistics from a chapter. You had to rebuild all these census tracts, census block, just to get your numbers. But we did the tribal subdivision. They have statistical mapping in census where you can gather statistics information. Did you raise your hand?
I was just wondering where the satellite offices are located.
They'll be at over here. Rema, Kojile, and Elm. Those are the satellite communities within Navajo. Those are the ones that I was talking about, the satellite communities. We have the big Navajo, and then we have the 3 communities. A lot of times, these communities back in 2019, these communities were covered by other offices. Then some of these were covered by Flagstaff office. So back in 2000, we said we're going to do Navajo. Navajo will cover all Navajos. And then for the 2010, just a profile here. Total count for Navajo was 332,129. This is all Navajo. Back in 2000, there was a lot more Navajos living on the reservation. So when this count came in back in 2000, there was, I believe, 53% is not living off the reservation. 47% is living on the reservation. And then I just did one chart, just the age breakdown. You look at from 0 to 19 back in 2000, the population. Probably half of the population is in that area. So this is where I tell chapter data is very important. When we say that we want to have senior center or Head Start or whatever, then you look at this and say, okay, each chapter has these data. So there's a lot more younger kids. So it's just something to look at back in 2000 by age group. We can, like I said, in the community development website, it has all this information by communities. And then there's something to think about, I count, we count. And then going back to the first slide, why do I count? You know, it's all about fair representation, and then getting our equal share. So if we don't get counted, you know, we get less money. We don't get counted, you know, they might redraw the districts where, you know, an example that I always make is like Apache County, we have 3 board of supervisors, 2 covers Navajo. Let's say that we don't get a good count, you know, they might say, okay, you don't need 2 supervisors, maybe 1 supervisor. So back and when we had 88 council, we did use the census 2000 to do the reapportionment. Then when we went from 88 to 24, we used the census for reapportionment. So, you know, if council wants, they're talking about reapportionment again. And I had a meeting with Board of Election here a couple of weeks ago. Then government development, they're starting to talk about, you know, using the 2020 count, when the numbers come up. So if they decide to use the 2020 count, you know, if your community, your chapter doesn't have a good count, then, you know, what happens, or your neighboring chapter, then you might lose a council to another area and all that. Then what can you help? As NHA, you know, you're one of the bigger boards and commissions within the Navajo. Also, you have like 7,000 housing unit. Now, you probably have a housing unit in each community. So census, when there's a knock on the door, you know, we're knocking on a housing unit. So that's where, you know, NHA is. The money is part of the formulation that happens. You know, a lot of them are using formula that money comes to Navajo. So how can we help, you know, as a commission, just like Navajo pass a resolution saying that we will support, partner with census, meaning that we'll provide outreach, meaning that we'll provide education and awareness to the tenants. Although beyond the because of confidentiality. I know that NHA, you know, you're required to have 4 tenants in that unit. There's probably more than 4 in some cases. So, you know, getting an accurate count, they might think, okay, if I put 10 on here, does it mean I'll get evicted? You know, things like that. People will start wondering. That's where undercount comes in. But if you have, you know, having a good count, NHA can use that data and say, okay, we have so many people, but yet we only got these many houses. So as NHA, as an organization, you know, you can be a real big help to this effort, to the census effort. Because a lot of folks, you know, if you times 7,000 by how many housing units, you know, there's almost 1/4 of the population, almost 1/4 of the population that lives within NHA. So, that we need to come up with a good strategy on how to inform our tenants and informing them, that telling them, you know, it's safe and secure, that it's used for an important reason. So this where, you know, how you can help establishing partnership and all that, passing resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I appreciate that. I I guess my one question I had, just real quick, and I'll pass it on to the rest of the commissioners. Obviously, I think that there's opportunities to be a partner here in many different ways. Besides, I mean, what we have on the slide, is there any other ideas that you have specifically that we might have to do or pass to give you the best help we can, or is there something that we need to have a work session that we can sit down and kind of come up with an idea? I mean, obviously, we've got access to a lot of resources in many different ways, and you know, I think ultimately what I would want to do personally would just be as encouraging as possible to make sure we do get an accurate count. It helps in many different ways for us to be able to advocate to eliminate overcrowding within our units and items like that. But is there something specific that you are thinking of, or do we need to sit down and have some sort of work session with the NHA team?
Probably a work session might help, trying to put things on the board and see what will work. Then also, one thing I failed to mention, I'll send it to the staff here, is that at the HUD level, and then also there's other agencies that approve temporary employment that will not affect their eligibility. I'll go ahead and make a copy. I just got it the other day. So, you know, like HUD is named in there, that if you work, if you live in the housing, if you work, that should not affect your eligibility. And also food stamps, and then there's other agencies.
Good.
I'll go ahead and send that out. Now back to your question, probably a work session, see if I can meet with the staff and see how we can.
Okay, and I think one thing I'd offer up is the fact that we have the GIS system that helps us locate our homes and make sure we understand the vicinity and the geographic aspects, but it seems like there's a lot of partnerships we could come up with that specifically. So where's the Navajo Nation the area census office located at?
It's going to be on the fairgrounds.
Okay.
It used to be at the fairgrounds back in 2000, right at the corner by Bashes. So because of the government shutdown, a lot of these openings, they got moved back. We're supposed to have our office right now, but now they're looking at mid-September to get our office going. So operation will probably, folks be in that office probably October 1st.
Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Mitchell, I have a question about double counting. Is there such a thing where, say my mother has two homes and is counted in one, but would prefer to be counted on the Navajo Nation, but she's not there when the census worker comes? Are there adjustments made? Or how do you prevent a double count?
There's a slogan for census, I'm trying to remember. Sort of goes this way: be counted at the right place only one time, something like that.
Okay,
But anyway,
that makes sense.
that's your question. You know, a lot of times, you know, we live over here, but on the national side, they use April 1st. They use April 1st as that date. Where were you living? Where were you at on April 1st? On the outside, that's what they use. But for Indian country, we deliver our questionnaire in mid-March. So when they fill out the questionnaire, let's say that you fill out the questionnaire. You fill out the questionnaire and you're doing the questionnaire and your mom was staying with you. And if she stays there most of the time, then you probably need to fill it out with your questionnaire. But if she says, no, I'm going to be counted back at my hometown. So let's say that you live in Phoenix over here. Then there's somebody delivering that questionnaire to the house. So nobody's home, and we'll try to deliver it till somebody opens the door, or we'll ask the neighbor. But then your mom goes back over there, and then she fill up that questionnaire. So back to the double counting, I guess it's really up to There's no way to track it?
No way to track it.
No way to track the double count?
So mom doesn't open the door in Albuquerque, but gets to the survey by April 1st back home.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
There's a lot of, there's a lot that happens when somebody doesn't open the door. There's a lot more procedures. So that's probably going to cover during the training.
Okay.
So when the training happens, we'll probably meet with you guys again, saying that this is the procedure. There's a lengthy procedures. You know, I'm just telling you the simple one. There's probably a lot more in between on how not to double count and all that.
Right. So it's voluntary, though, for the
Yeah.
most part. Okay. All right, thank you.
So I've always said too, when I do presentation at the local level, you know, voting is a civil right. You know, voting, if you want to vote, because, you know, a lot of things happens when you vote. Same way, you know, being counted. It's probably another civil duty that is out there because of what I just mentioned.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Really appreciate your presentation. We'll make sure that we potentially maybe even section that out. If you can provide us with the slides, you can post that to our website.
I'm also on the agenda for the next,
There is, since you're gonna move back in.
in the breakout session.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing you. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and switch gears into the next presentation. We've got Mr. Irby here from the USDA, Rural Development. And we get him set up and give his presentation.
Joe, open the door. Joe, open the door.
Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this morning. I know there's a lot better speakers, but I'll try my best. I didn't have this presentation on a flash drive, but I think you have a copy of the USDA Rural Development Summary of Programs focused on Navajo Nation. I don't know who really put this together, but I think they did a good job of it. It goes through the for instance, the first section is for individuals, businesses, and agricultural producers, programs that individual members need to fill out and work with our local offices in regards to those programs. Our single-family housing program is just to bring up a few issues about that. We have a hard time making a single-family housing loan within Navajo and Apache counties. And we had an office in Holbrook for many years. And it came down to the point we were only making 3 or 4 loans a year for single-family housing. And so we closed that office and moved it to Sholo in hopes that the situation would improve. This year, I think we've only made 4 loans. And basically, the issue is that the HUD income guidelines that we use for our programs are so low that people can't afford the homes, or their credit is so poor that we're unable to help them out. The main program that we deal with on Navajo is the 504 Loan and Grant Program. And it's a good program for the elders because there's a $7,500 lifetime grant that they can receive for the repair and improvement of their homes. We can do handicap accessibility, and that's probably the biggest program that we have on the nation for single individuals at the present time.
Can I interrupt and ask a quick question on that one? So we went and met with USDA in DC. 17, we talked about this. They called it, if I remember right, maybe I'm not remembering right, but winterization. Does that particular grant for the elderly of 7,500, does it have to be a winterization thing, or can it just be a home improvement in general?
It's home improvement. A lot of times, there was a loan can go with it we try to make a loan for $7,490. If you go above 7,500, we have to take a lien on the house, and in some cases, order an appraisal and all that. So we try to avoid that. The issue that 2 years ago, they came up with changes in that program, which I totally disagree with, but before, if an elder or someone had bad credit, we could still go ahead and do a loan and grant with them. But since the change in 2 years ago, if they have bad credit, we can't do the loan or the grant. So that's caused a real issue, and it's just something I just totally don't agree with, but that's the rules I have to follow. There are exceptions that we can grant, and I do personally try to grant any exception I can to move forward with the home improvement loans. But it's just amazing what some of our workers can do. You know, they work for, I think, a whole lot less than minimum wage. But by the time they finish the home in the area, it looks like a brand new home. We just we rely on local carpenters, craftsmen to do the work. Sometimes that's kind of hard to do. We have workers from other chapter areas that will travel, great distances to these homes and do the work. And but as far as I'm concerned, it's a great program. At the present time, I work in what they call the Copper Corridor. It's 4.5 hours one way for me to travel down there, but I work this program down there on some of the old Superior, Mammoth, San Manuel, those areas in those communities. But by far, it's my favorite program. I work at a lot of different programs, but I enjoy working with the elders and anyone to apply in that program. This is broken out in another section for certified chapters, nonprofits, and cooperative organizations. There are some programs that we can work with certified chapters on instead of having to go through the nation. And I'd like to applaud Mr. Mitchell on the talk on census, because we rely a lot on census data. One of the things that kind of took us by surprise in 2010 is that some of the chapters became ineligible for grant funding because of the MHI for those communities, Chuba, Chinle, Fort Defiance. And I think it's mainly because of my take on it is that you have a lot of people living in those communities, maybe brothers and sisters living with other family members in the same household. So it drives the median household income up, because basically, there's a difference between, I was dealing with one chapter here lately, and I was shocked that the MHI was $47,000 for that community, which knocked the grant funding from 45% down to 15%. So there's issues in regards to that we have to deal with. I know that one of the other big issues is that any infrastructure loan or grant that we deal with has to go through NTUA, since they control all the infrastructure for the nation. They have to be the applicant for the different chapters for any development that has to be done. And we wait years on those applications, and after we get the application, there's a letter of conditions that goes out to them, and it may take another couple of years before they will work their way through that letter of conditions to be funded. Just recently, we were ready to go on Ganado, and the cost overrun is $6.8 million on that one. And we're in the process of obtaining that additional funding for that project. The other ones that Chin Lee was obligated in December of 16. We still don't have the final work on that. The initial bid was right at $7,700,000. So I'm sure there's going to be a cost override there because of the number of years in between the initial bid and the final. Chin Lee wastewater treatment plant, that estimate is $15 million. Kienta wastewater treatment plant is right at $15 million. Tuba City wastewater treatment plant estimates in 2013 were $23 million. So those costs will, by the time the final loan approval and time comes in, they will be, I'm sure, a whole lot more than the initial estimates. But like they say, it takes a long time and we have the money, you know, we get, like Mr. Mitchell talked about, the 35-day shutdown that we had. It's just caused nothing but problems. Our funding has been off. We, you know, we're already to the end of our funding year where we have to, they start pooling the money in August, and we have to have all these loans ready to go and funded, or then we have to start competing on a national level for those funds instead of our state allocation. And we're always pressing, you know, people to get those applications in so we can obligate the money, and the money will be there for the projects. And then there's other programs that, like the different divisions of the nation apply for the programs. Well, we've got our directors, they want the audit for the nation, not just for the division. And I've fought that for years in regards to that. I didn't think that's fair either, but that's their take on it, and that's what we're up against. That they, and that's almost impossible to get as a current audit or current financials for the nation for some of these programs. But as you can see from here, there's a lot of opportunities for NTUA, you know, to apply for different grants and loans through the program, and they do. I think like Shiprock, they got a $25 million loan, and I won't say for sure, but I think they got an $8 million grant to go along with that. And I won't swear to that. But that's basically some of the programs we have. I don't know if there's individual ones. That one where we ran into the MHI is through the Community Facilities Loan and Grant Program. And that's where we've helped, like Sage Memorial Hospital in Ganado. We did Nasoni Miles there in St. Michael's. But there's been several other community facility loans and grants that we've done throughout the nation. It's the other thing that we were in hopes that NHA was going to help us out with was when we got a letter of intent on the Fort Defiance Housing Corporation portfolio. And I know that since the chief executive director is no longer here, or officer, that's kind of gone by the wayside, but we did get, I I understand that Fort Defiance Housing Corporation does have another letter of intent, and from the investors and the former chief executive officer. But one of the things that I had already gone to Washington and asked that the restrictive use language be taken out of the 538 program that we have. That's the ones that's programmed through another lender. Wells Fargo is the lender in Pienta, and Bank of New York, I think, is the lender in Church Rock. We had to pay the lender off at Rio Perico and Fort Defiance, so we own the 73 homes there. The issue being is that there was a name when I was on the call the other day with Mr. Wasetta and is it Seti? That after that I emailed Fort Defiance or the contact person there, and I told them that the restrictive use that I was going to try to have released was not still on the table. That it would have to be, that would be something that we wouldn't consider if it went to someone else other than NHA.
I think if you got time, we can stick around, we can talk about more of that in executive session. I think that'd be helpful. But the other part was, I think specifically for us, one of the troubling things to hear is the 4 or 5 loans that you guys get a month. I mean, that's obviously there's so much need out there, and we've talked about this with the Department of Veteran Affairs and some other entities. But what if we come to you with 100 loan applications for that grant money, and just consistently continue to give those to you?
For the repairs?
For the repairs. I mean, it just seems like we're just leaving money on the table, basically, when nobody's applying. Is it possible that somehow NHA can work in a capacity to help give you the loan applications that you need to start securing the financing?
Well, whenever I do the talks before the chapters and everything, some of the chapters will help their elders and so forth fill out the form. The application is 37 pages long, and a lot of it's not applicable to each situation. And I try to get someone from the local chapter that would help the individual chapter member fill those out. Last year, we made over 100 of those loans and grants, mainly grants. And we have 2 ladies in the St. Michael's office, and they just can't keep up with the demand for that program. And we have 1 gentleman in Flagstaff that takes care of the west side, and they process just as many as they can. But the other requirement that we have, which is a foolish one in regards to the way that it's set up, is that if we don't have the complete application within 15 days, we have to withdraw it. So if grandma or grandpa comes in, and they have to go get additional paperwork, if they don't get back to town and don't get that turned in, then the application is going to be withdrawn, and then we have to start all over again. So, but it's basically getting all the paperwork in, the bank statements, the picture ID, social security card, that information. And it's just, and then the estimates, estimates for the repairs and who's going to do them. That's another issue that we have, is that, we rely on 2 guys on the west side that just do, unbelievable work. But, they can't keep up with all the different distances between all of these homes if we can't find somebody locally to help us out. They can't be driving all the way to Navajo Mountain from Kaibito every day,
Right.
To do the construction and so forth.
So I guess my question would be, what's your capacity as far as funding amounts for the $7,500 grant? If I came to you with 100 applications every month, prepackaged, ready to go. Is that too many? Is it not enough? Or could I do more? What would be what's a ballpark type of funding?
Well, with the shutdown this year, we didn't know till probably a month ago as to how much money we were even gonna have.
Right.
So then, now they'll start pooling that money. Right now, there's money available. And they'll pool it like August 10th or something like that. If we don't have all and they've come up with so many computer systems that you've got to go through to get those lined up and get them in there for funding, that, I can only do so many. The ladies in St. Michael's can only do so many, and the gentleman in Flagstaff can only do so many. It's just, I don't know if we could process that many in that length of time.
Is that with, and I'm just trying to work it out in my head, but is that with USDA employees? Those people are the
Yes.
two you're talking about in St. Michael's and the one in Flagstaff. So I guess and that's them receiving all the stuff and collecting it and going through to make sure they're doing the response to get back and going back and forth to get the rest of the thing within the 15-day time frame. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is that potentially we have some sort of partnership that allows us to prep these applications to be ready to go. Everything's there in the file, whether it's physical or whether it's like a digital way that we can just transfer it over to you somehow, some way. We have 15 offices across the Navajo Nation, that we can start assembling this type of loan type applications. And we also have an understanding of the people that A, need help on their houses, B, who meet the qualifications of being, elderly, or whatever the threshold is for the age. I don't want to just throw a bunch of applications out there at you if you can't process them. If we gave you applications in that format where everything is ready to go and has been pre-checked off and it's all there, where you don't have to do a 15-day window where you have to go back and get stuff, if it was there ready to go, if I could hand you these, how many do you think you could process?
I wish all of them, but I don't know if that would be possible or not.
And the reason I'm asking is that if we get something together and we can prep this, I'll give you as many applications as you need, or if you can handle. But I need to know what the threshold would be so I don't overload you. The other thing I don't want to do from an organizational standpoint is make a bunch of promises to people that they can get that.
Exactly.
And they're either not the capacity on the USDA level to handle it, or potentially to process it, or the funding isn't available there. So it'd be helpful from that standpoint to know that there's money there, which I know we've talked about for several times, but if we can get that type of partnership with USDA to just hand over the documents to you and say, here you go, they're ready to roll. The other side of that coin is the fact that we have a temporary housing construction workers that we employ. So what's the current amount we have right now? 173 construction workers that are a temporary basis that when the work slows down on a different area, I would love to start putting them toward these things. And so rather than having the 3 people that you're talking about, we've got this massive team to keep busy that also helps our economic development because we're putting the funds back into the community. But I think that if we can get some numbers specifically for this, we could use this as a pilot program to really start getting the funding going. Because if it's sitting there, it's almost like a slap in the face to just leave it there on the table, especially when we have so many elderly people in need for this type of program. So,
That would be ideal.
okay.
So,
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Lee?
Is it possible to get someone at NHA certified in some way by USDA to do that entry? To essentially be one of those 2 people you have at St. Michael's, but within our house internally?
that would be something we could do. In some cases, there's money available for packaging those things. I don't know if there is this year or not. It's something I can check into. But whereas you would get paid by the package that you turn in, and you get paid if it's funded. So, but if there's an overload of the applications, they would just stay in the system until the next year's allocation came in, and then those would be funded.
Do you think it would, I think it'd be a great advantage if we had somebody internally at NHA who was essentially that USDA person in-house pushing that information through, and then looking at with a wider perspective, utilizing more of these other programs across NHA. And as someone that we fund, but that has your certification to handle that paperwork, because I don't know if, when I've worked with BIA, I've had certifications where I could pull out certain information on real estate or realty related information, but you have to go through the whole certification process to do that when you're working for a tribe. You're not actually the BIA person doing it, but you've got that same ability because you're working for the tribe's realty needs. So I kind of figured there might be something like that with USDA.
Well, we do have a packaging situation going on at the present time, and the organization that does that is RCAC. They provide the training to the packaging people, and then the first 10 or 12 applications that come in, RCAC reviews them, and then after that, if everything is good, then they certify that you're ready to go, that you can do it directly instead of having to go through them for review.
Okay. I think that's something we should do, look at doing.
No, because on the one down there in the Copper Corridor, I sat down with the city officials and somebody from that organization. I did the training as to what we need this, and this, for these. So.
Because it would be to our benefit to utilize more of the loans that are available for those individuals that come to us and say, I want a house, but I don't qualify on the income levels. What do you got? Well, we've got USDA. We can start that off and follow through with all the paperwork and just devote ourselves to that individual who comes in. So, rather than just handing it off to you and they're waiting in line until they're able to get their paperwork through.
I like his idea better. So, so I guess that would be another thing that, like a work session type thing. Let's talk about the possibilities and what we would need to do in order to train X amount of people to be able to input and process those things. And basically be a USDA specialist, coordinator, something like that within our organization. And figure out how best to fund it and that type of stuff. But obviously I'm upset that they just pulled resources from that area down to Sholo. Nothing against Sholo, but just it would be nice to have it there. And it seems, I guess, obvious that we're never going to get increased traffic by taking the office further away. So, any advocacy you can help us as an organization to get something in there. Because if we already have the infrastructure there, the people, the resources to get the applications through, it's really just creating a partnership between two governments and making sure that we can get the funding and not leave it on the table. Because, it seems like since we've talked about this for almost 2 years at this point, we're just going to have to just take it by the reins and drag it through and get it enacted because winter is coming up. The things do need to be fixed, and especially for our elderly people. Some of this is going to make a difference in whether it's going to be a good winter or a very hard one. So, from that standpoint, I would just encourage staff and everybody, let's all work together and see if we can get this thing up and going because it's coming up fast. Commissioner Lee.
I'll tell you, my vision on that would be, we had this housing expo type meeting with council members and government agencies about 2 months ago, and listening to the military, with all the loans they had available, but there wasn't hardly any action on the Navajo side. If we had an office internally that would have personnel that are working directly with the different agencies, yourself, VA, others that have monies available, then that's the approach I'd like NHA to go forward with, and then stay in contact with you to, make sure that we're maximizing all those resources that are available, and pursuing that as fast as possible with trained people. So,
Would be appreciated.
Madam Vice Chair?
I'm curious in your granting history on the Navajo Nation, do you have a summary of some sort that shows your history on Navajo and how much money provided in the form of a grant or a loan?
I'm sure I could gather the information for you.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, that's always good information to jumpstart new programs and target areas. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to another follow-up meeting, but if you can stick around until executive session, that'd be helpful. Thank you. All right. Next on the list, we got the executive report by Mr. Wasetta. Go turn it over to you. Get the microphone over to
it's working. It's working.
Morning, everybody. Before you is a June report. For the month of June, I'll focus on the Indian Housing Plan. This year, or this month, as of June 16th, our LOX balance is sitting at $232 million. And we have drawn down $56.3 million in terms of LOX. So our funding that we're at a good steady pace for the expenditures. This is not including some of the other funds that have been expended to, which will include at the end to meet that. So we're doing good for the federal funds of the expenditure portion. As of last week, was good. July 10th, we had the Resource Committee. We had presented the 2020 Indian Housing Plan to them. We had them, the Resource Committee approved that. And I'd like to throw a shout out to Mr. Delegate, the Honorable Delegate Mark Freeland, who provided assistance. It was good that we had him sponsor, because we have several projects in his location which we've been working on. So he helped the sponsorship, and the RDC approved it on July 10th. After the approval, it took us about four to 7 days, I believe it was, through legislation approval to get the resolution. So President signed last week. The day on July 18th, we submitted in the EPIC system, so it's officially in the books with HUD. We received the email from the HUD administrator that it was accepted in the LOX in the EPIC system. So we met that deadline. This month, it's going from, we have two scheduled reviews with HUD, which we're preparing. We have one through the 19th through the 20th, which staff is assisting, getting everything coordinated, what the HUD is asking for, just to have the streamlined visit. So that's in motion. The other portion of the Nahaz part, we had the remote monitoring review from HUD. The documentation that was provided to HUD was accepted. They reviewed it. It's been with them for a little more than a week and a half. So that's been completed. The final monitoring review updates regarding the Flex Creek property. We submitted all the documentation for that, which we haven't received any comments back on that ownership transfer. So that's been closed out with or submitted to HUD. The last portion of the documentation that provided is the HUD VASH program. We worked on this with actually Kim Bahi and Abby Joseph through the HUD program. She's the VA social worker out of Prescott. They completed the questionnaire for us, which we submitted to VASH. And this VASH here is that HUD was asking us as Navajo Nation, which holds the largest portion of VASH applications, what would happen if the HUD office provided more money out there? How would that help veterans out there? So we gave them our take. We asked, basically, told them that we would, all tribes would benefit from it. But looking at their policies, there just need some changes in the policy to streamline it versus on reservation and off reservation. So we provided some recommendation. So that's been filed with HUD. So that's that other documentation has been completed. The Crown Point Youth Program, as you know, that we went through the motions on that. They got the money, $2.5 million. We're ready to put it out to bid. We ran into a little pickle there, struggle. The contract, there's a change order that came in, so we're looking through that, doing our due diligence. It's going beyond the 50% threshold, so we're going to have to come back to board if we accept that, to give your authorization if we can increase that A&E contractual service. So we're doing our due diligence on that portion, Mr. Franklin and staff. The Chinley Nursing Home portion of it, we're looking through. We've requested a joint meeting with the board. We haven't got a date report back to us yet. The question from Mr. Claw was, what was the meeting for? Explained to him it was just a request from Chairman Beecher to reach out to his board to have a board-to-board meeting without the executive management team involved. So that hasn't, we haven't got a response back, but we will send another request and ask for that follow-up. But on the other hand of this, as of July 1st, we're going through we got another request from Mr. Claw. They want a contract modification for $51,000. We're writing a letter back, unfortunately, that we can't do a contract modification to his contract because we're not part of the legal parties that's involved between his architect and them. So I'm leaving it up to him if he's going to modify his contract. But we're going to document that and send that back to him. So that's going to close out what we're working with the HUD in and housing plan, major areas there. In progress, we're completing.
Mr. Lee?
I thought that we as a board had received an email from Chinley Nursing Home Board requesting a meeting since the last board meeting.
There's an invite out there, but there's no response. The only response back was Mr. Claw asking why were we requesting the meeting. So there's no formal letter back to us.
I thought we received a meeting from Chinley.
I'm not sure, sir.
Can we look into that and see?
I'll look into that. Moving on to the activities in progress within the executive branch, is that we have staff here that's are working on completing the $5 million competitive grant. We've actually gotten all the projects lined up. We have some new development, we have some rehab work, and then some improvements with the model activity, which we're working on. We met with the Community Housing Improvement Division, the CHID program, and asked them if they wanted to submit something with us. Unfortunately, they declined to submit with us because they had monies already earmarked through CSN funds, which they couldn't take on any other additional projects. So they let us know on there. So we just sent them a notice back to them saying that thank you for your assistance, and then we're moving forward ourselves. The deadline on here is August 8th. So we're finalizing it this week, and next week should be something for the final review, getting everything together. We had at the early sets of this activity, we were notified by NOFA through HUD that there was a requirement that we had to have Navajo Nation resolution to support the project. But that was it. They changed it up with HUD. So HUD basically said all we need to do is just a letter saying that we're okay, a letter of interest saying that we're fine to apply. So we're working on getting that letter of interest to submit with the competitive grant. So that's, there's a rehab of 10 units, new construction of 6 units, and parking lot paving. That's all part of this program. So that's part of the competitive grid. During this month, we did some policy revisions, and that was the ongoing. We had the procurement policy that were worked on and completed, which is going to be presented today. The P card policy, the MPI and PI policy, the travel policy, and then the whistleblower and the BOC bylaws have all been updated. So some of the policies that we finalized will be presented today. The other portion that's in progress is Hoan Hajo. Been working with Eric Fishborn and Rayanne from JL Gray, gathering all of their information with JL Gray, which manage that program, looking at all operational costs. We've acquired the digital information from WH Pacific. We've done the structural assessment and observation. So we're going through that portion there. The one thing is, once we can get all of that put together with JL Gray, we'll sit down, make a meeting request with the president's office who owns the building, and start panning out how we're going to do the transfer of interest of that property to the Housing Authority. Meeting course. This past month was
Commissioner Lee?
Just get back to that, Chin Lee.
I see this email on June 27th from Wayne Claw to Dwayne Wasetta, asking us about a request from Chin Lee for an agenda for the meeting. So they've brought it up since the last meeting.
That's I touched base with him. He wants an agenda. That's what I explained to him. It was a board-to-board meeting. Just it was basically they wanted to sit down and have an informal meeting between you all. So he hasn't replied after that.
So you're waiting for a response from us, board members?
No.
No, I'm waiting for a date from them just to say, because they were saying, you're saying it was you explained to Mr. Claw that it was an informal meeting just to bring us together to be able to start
Yes, sir.
Okay,
talking.
because you mentioned 2 topics on here that I don't know that those are going to be on the agenda. So we're waiting on a date
Yeah,
and a response from them.
Yeah, I asked him on the original. I asked him for 3 dates that the best was suited for them to be with us. So back onto the meeting portion of it. Last month was we continued with the monthly report, the managers meeting and the core meetings. So it's 2 different meetings that we have. We have the overall division managers meetings we have right after the board meetings, and then the core meetings dealing with working with key areas with policy changes, with projects, and then internal. So there's 2 different meeting structures we have with senior management. Those are doing very well because everyone is weekly update aspects of set milestones, and that's how we attack that with the policy revisions. And those core meetings were very fruitful to get everything that we need to get done in a timely manner. The Navajo Nation community meetings we had the resource committee that we had on June 24th, and then we backed it up with the budget and finance meeting in Tahajali on the 26th, and then I attended the Navajo Nation Veterans meeting at council chambers, which those meetings there were basically updates on some of the struggles that the Navajo Veterans Office is working through. They did have some changes there with John Keene leaving, and Navajo Nation President has appointed one of his staff assistants to overtake that, Mr. James Zimmerman. So he's taking that on. I met informal with Ms. James, and I did a reach out to him to actually sit down with Ed Chase to how we could help him build their program back up. So that's some of the reach outs we had with that with James. The other meeting that we was Mr. Garcia from Navajo Nation Credit Services. I had Calandra and Kathy head this up, and this is looking at funding cycles for some of the people are over income that want a house, but we can't meet them under the deposit. And with them, they basically with housing services one of the biggest struggles that they had with their program was that they couldn't get contractors. So to build these homes. So we were looking at a reach out, developing a process that we'll do all the bidding, we'll do all the venting of all the contractors, and then we can give that, we'll just basically turn a contract over to them, and then they'll fund the projects. So that's still in motion, but he's really interested in helping us and working that partnership for that, for homeownership units.
And Mr.
Just a question, what about the NHA designs? Because I know that credit services require the stamp drawings.
We presented that. We have designs already in place, certified and everything. So they were happy because that was one of the biggest struggles, is that having some type of documentation in place. So by having the schematics all in place will help them streamline their process. So their office has been struggling over the years, but now I think that partnership with NHA will help them out to get more people kind of into a homeownership process that will pay for their loans.
Are they going to increase their loan amount?
I'm not sure. That's some discussion that we're going to look at, because we're now need to talk about total development costs. And this is probably some of the things we can look in with USDA, some of the offsites for the infrastructure, and touch base with NHA. So the offsite infrastructure is usually one that really kills a lot of scrappy sites. So trying to balance out those costs and present it to them is something that we need to look into. But one of the biggest things I'm happy about with Calandra and Kathy is that we've opened that door. So we have somebody that's actually wanting to sit down with us and move forward.
Thank you.
One of the other big meetings I had was Honorable Amber Cotty. She sat down and met with her a couple hours. And what she was asking, we went over on NHA's planning and construction activities within her region. And one of the biggest things that she's advocate for NHA and looking at how can we improve all these areas. One of the big concerns is that the Gallup water line pipeline. What are our big plans for once those infrastructures are turned on there? What can we do in those regions to increase housing in those areas? So that's one of her dialogues. She's really pushing for those areas for housing developments. The other part of the meeting that we had there was with her abuse with elderly missing women, Navajo women on the reservation. So she'll be presenting here on Wednesday, I believe. And that's one of the things what we also found out. HUD sent us a notice. There's money available for that, for like safe houses, for treatment. So that's a one-time first ever. Department of Justice is offering that. So we're looking into that to see how we can do that across the reservation, because the domestic violence within a lot of the rural areas is high, but they don't have places. So we're looking at that, how we offset that. Maybe we can use some 1937 homes that they're not getting any kind of subsidy, so we can renovate those. So that's in motion with discussion with her. The other thing is continuous meetings with Fort Defiance chapter, and this is a big hurdle. We've actually Mr. Franklin is taking the lead on that. I started the first couple meetings, but we're finding finding vacant units there. We're looking at getting all the land transfers and getting all the site controls, looking at areas. And there's roughly about 19 different lots that we could build there. So those are some of the things that the chapter is willing to work with NHA. If we can get those acquired, we'll turn them over to the Housing Authority to redevelop in those communities. And there's some of the things that we're looking at about how do we rebuild that community. One of the big things is that those homes that have been burned down is adjacent to the USDA housing site, the Rio Perco Acres there. So those are some of the things that the chapter is really concerned with. So the chapter is really supporting us, give us a chapter resolution. So their support is behind NHA to help them restore their community. So,
Commissioner Lee.
Your report says properties at the Sandstone property. Are these units that don't have any requirements from USDA, or?
These units are, there's a master lease there. The sandstone was originally part of this old housing site called Black Rock Rio Purple Acres. And then when they got the HAZA loans, they actually only took a certain portion of the public rental. The ones we're talking about are the homeowners' individual lots. When some of the houses burned down, the homeowners abandoned them, they went and got home sites somewhere else within the community. So the chapter is basically taking those home sites, those individual homeowner lots back, and they want to rebuild them as homeowners or something else. So that's kind of but the first thing is treating those sites, because one of the things that we're finding out is there's all the infrastructure is there, all the water lines, sewer lines, is just getting those sites cleaned up. So that's in motion now to redevelop, how would you say, reestablish the community. So that's kind of what's one of the big activities we're doing there.
It's also a high crime area too.
Thank you.
In the last portion of meetings with the Navajo President's Office, me and Mr. Franklin actually sat down with the Chief of Staff and his representative there with the 2020 Indian Housing Plan, and looked at the projected $120 million expenditure goals that we're looking at, all the project council reservation, over 300 different public rental homeownership sites that we're going to be developing, and kind of give them insights of the big magnitude of what 2020 is going to look like. And they were impressed. And a lot of these projects are rolling in from this year, next year, just because of some of the delays we had. But they were excited because this was kind of the first time their office actually sat down and seen these up front, which was good for us. The other portion that we met with Mr. Franklin, we met with Navajo Relocation. We opened that dialogue up because there's some communities out there, Komai Mesa. We're looking at developing some units out there in that community. So that's in motion. Some of that scattered site development. One of the things from the Hopi relocation meeting was that they wanted us to look at more community-based development because they're concerned about the scattered site infrastructure costs. So they say we want to build some of these communities. So we have a meeting scheduled next week out at Komai Mesa with some of the Bennett-Freeze communities and looking at the actual, their idea and what they're looking at for developments for Bennett-Freeze. So that's going to be with Miss Pearl Yellowman's office, Chid, and then NHA sitting down together with Bennett-Freeze and see what we can do and lay out a milestone plan to redevelop those communities. Last part, budgets, we're doing good.
Commissioner Lee.
I was wondering if you've, if your group has looked at utilizing what I saw in USDA for all these colleges, prep schools, community centers that are looking for funds, that it appears that USDA has monies available for that.
Well, we finalized that. We have some units across reservation where we don't get FCAS, no subsidies. Once we take it off the FCAS, and then it has no threshold for meeting the HAZA requirements. So we're looking at some of these areas that has all the telecommunication, looking at all of the infrastructure that we need. So once it's been taken off the FCAS roll, pretty much Housing Authority can use those units for what they have in terms of the eligibility criteria for housing low income. So that's in motion. One of the things that we're still trying to get over, trying to find more information on the certification criteria for library or education centers. What do we have to, what kind of criteria do we have to follow there? But that's in motion. One of the ones that we talked with was NTU and Crown Point. But see, Crown Point's expanding with NTU, so we're thinking, well, we need to find another rural area. And we thought about Pineal. Pineal will be a fine area that we could look at because it still has telecommunication fiber out there. And we could get some networking connected there. So we identified all the FCAS units that were taken off HUD's listing. So those are some of the things that was, I guess, the planning side to identify some prime locations.
So we had requests for student housing from Navajo Navajo prep, would that fall within what USDA could be utilized for, as well as the community center at Kayenta?
Well, the issue that we ran into in regards to saline, whenever I first started working with Fort Defiance Housing Corporation many years ago, saline donated that land around the college there for housing. Well, then whenever the situation arose, it became a civil rights issue because of, we can't limit it to students. For that area, they wanted only college employees and students to occupy the housing. We established through the Civil Rights Commission of our agency that we couldn't discriminate just for those people when we had other people from the community applying for that housing.
I thought you had an education-based grant or loan, community facilities, loans and grants?
Right.
For public bodies, nonprofits, and federally recognized Indian tribes.
Yes.
That's already discriminatory in its language. How couldn't that qualify for usage as housing for those needs?
Well, we haven't had that. The other way that we can address it is workforce housing, where it is for that particular entity. And we did that in Pinon in regards to the school there, and we did teacher housing, as well as Ganado. We did teacher housing there.
Well, it's student housing.
I don't know of a particular situation, and we've done student housing.
Because like Navajo Prep, I mean, the students who go there, I think there could be information drawn on how they are, like their meals already get paid for, you know, through, I think through a government subsidy. So from that qualification, maybe the housing could be qualified also for the students who meet that income threshold.
I can research it and find out, but
All right.
I just can't think of a situation at the present time where we've been able to do that.
So under your Rural Community Development Initiative, to facilitate housing, community facility, and community economic development projects, that's a grant right there, and that's what I was talking about as far as the needs for, like Kayenta wants a combined chapter house, community center, all of that into one, but you've got matching funds required for the grant, and you know we get approached by these essentially nonprofit community organizations or schools that are looking for housing, and you know it'd be good it'd be to our benefit if we could have that matching fund available, or if we could utilize all of what USDA's got available for those needs. You know, so that's what I was hoping our group could do in talking with you, and I hope to see in the future where we have some information supplied to the board that says, okay, here's how we're going to maximize our usage of USDA funds, and get that to us and say this is what we see, you know, because you know, there's a much larger basket there of funds that are available, and we're only using what we have, and we need to expand those.
Okay.
So as far as when you go back and you look for your answers, are you talking to the DC office? Are you talking to a regional office to get the answers? 'Cause maybe we need to elevate it and try to get some more concrete answers on how and why we can use these funds for students or workforce housing, or students who get employed by the net college as part of their scholarship grant to become workforce housing. I mean, there's got to be a workaround, but I mean, obviously, there's a need there, and it's going to benefit many people. So I get where they're trying to carve it in a way that helps people, but sometimes it seems like we're defeating ourselves before we get started because of all the rules.
Well, basically, the other thing too is, you know, there's a whole lot more loan dollars than there are grant dollars, and it seems like the grant dollars are going away faster than we actually realize it. And we've tried a lot in Tuba City with the hospital. We've been trying to do workforce housing with them, but it's to get the paperwork to something that we can, act on is an issue. It's just that to get the paperwork to a point where we can say, yes, we can do this, no, we can't do that. That's the issue that we've been up against in a lot of the different communities.
With regards to like trying to stay in contact with USDA and your body, are you based out of Show Low?
No, I'm in Prescott Valley.
Okay. Perhaps we can do like a monthly update meeting, trying to get this together, because as much as we've talked about it, but even at the DC level, we haven't really taken advantage of it still. And I think that something like this, where we've got these opportunities, and many times we have an ability to do some sort of matching funds or something. It's just we need more partners. We can't do all of it by ourselves, but if there's combinations of grants, loans, and bringing other entities into it, I'd like to create some sort of template so where we show how this can be done over and over. So, like Commissioner Lee was talking about the community center building in Kayenta, it would be great to replicate that in many different cities, because
Exactly.
it's going to provide those types of services that USDA has basically said these are the types of things we want to work on.
Right.
We just got to come up with the right mix, and I've told this to some of the Navajo leadership as well, but we stand ready to try to put this together. So if we can just start to continue to stay in contact and see how far we can get within, let's say, the next 6 months, and see if we can come up with a formula. So, any other questions?
I think just to add on, in closing, this is kind of the dialogue that we've talked with Don. There's a lot of areas out there. How do we the collaborative effort? How do we work together to achieve these areas? What do we need to do, and how do we need to do it? And I think that's one of the big goals for the partnership between USDA and NHA is that how do we fit this all of these activities into the eligible activities that we know we can be fruitful on. So I think this is the first big dialogue we had with USA. So it's going to take some time working through it. Let's see what the low-hanging fruit we have, which then we build off of that. So that with the Navajo relocation, that was in my information update for this month. With the big thing with safety, the safety portion, we didn't have no incidents with an executive office, so we're doing good. And no major issues. I think for all the stuff we were working with HUD, getting the Indian housing plan filed on time is one of the big things of the accomplishments for housing authority. So I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and transfer the next part of the report for Mr. Franklin.
Morning, Commissioner, Board. Again, for recommending Senator Franklin, I'm the interim operations officer, and you'll find my report underneath tab 5, your booklet there. I did some highlights just to give some of the confidence that we have. So the first thing there I want you to look at is that table. It has the labor, Navajo labor that's been hired. I have all 3 months within the third quarter. So for this report, we're due for June 2019. We have 6 people for 6 Navajos that are working for PMEX. We have 5 for Visa Construction on Tube City Road Project. Sellers Construction has 75 personnel out in the field, Navajo personnel out in the field to support the client's modernization. They have 39 over at the Chilchimito modernization project. And Lamb Rockford has their new development over in Kaibito, and they have 21 Navajo personnel on site. Then you have Sowers Construction again, at Gully Eye Modernization Site in 29. And then Lamb Rockford just finished out Ojo Amarillo. Those units been turned over, so there's no labor hire there at this time. Then we have maintenance temporary hires. We have 176 or 167 for a total of 342 navigable employees for the month of June. So for the average employment across the 3 months is 286 navigable. So the next one, next table, next page, has to do with the procurement activities that's been going on. We have for activity 1, which is operation and maintenance. Most of these projects are having to do with the external repairs of existing units out there, meaning new roofs, new siding, doors, windows, taking care of all the penetrations that are happening both on the walls and on the roofs. And then we also are doing a lot of, if we don't find insulation in some of these areas, we'll put insulation, especially around the pipes on the exterior walls. So we have AZ 1203, that is still, we are still refining the scope of work on that. And we had bid it out before, but we're back out to re-advertisement. 15005, that's 20 units over at the Rue. Contractor withdrew their bids due to their 60-day bid bond expiring. They said they could no longer hold on to their original bid price, so they withdrew their bids. So now we have to go back out and rebid because the next bidders on that list were all over $1 million. And we know that we can do those units for less than $1 million. The same thing happened to 1504, there was 30 units there. It was the same contractor, they withdrew both bids. And then 1541 has been complete, that's in 551, which is over in Torreon, that's currently in construction right now. We have New Mexico 40 units over in that's been completed. All the New Mexico projects, there's 3 sites there. That is in the board documents for award, and also for the 60 units over in Navajo. That's also in the board documents for approval. We still have 2 other projects that are going for rebid. And that was just because we had, the bids were just way too high. We redid the scope and we're back out to rebid on those. That's 15080, which over in Alamo, and then the Arizona, 2 project sites over in Arizona, total of 40 units. We have modernization. We have 2 projects in that area. One is the third final phase over at 1257, which is just north of the central office there in Window Rock. And that has been completed. It's under legal review, and we should have that under in the board documents at the next board meeting for approval. Gutty Eye, of course, has been awarded, was approved by the board, and that now is in construction. And then we have Activity 9, which is new construction units. We completed the first phase of Rock Springs, Window Rock, and Guy. All those have completed the first phase, and we are now entering into submitting our scopes of work to the shortlisted bidders, and then we should be finished with the second phase here pretty quick. That's now in process. We pulled Forest Lake and Chindu and Lichi from the original advertisement and moved those to task orders. Those were originally under a task order based contract. And they were originally given to WH Pacific to go out and assess sites and to give us recommendations. They did give us recommendations, so now we're just adding on to that task order for them to do the overall design of those two projects. So that has been moved over. Cornfields is design build. We reached a GMP that we can accept. The only problem there is we're trying to, this is a modular project. There have been several reports on some construction deficiencies. So we reviewed those deficiencies, and we're waiting for a corrective action plan to make sure that they don't leave the site without completing those deficiencies. So that's kind of on hold now until we actually get a corrective action plan. We have schedules, and that's agreed upon by both parties. Then we have activity 10, which is homeowner units. That project, there's 16 units there. We are, the bidding has been complete. We've selected it. It's now under legal review. So we should have that at the next board meeting. And then, of course, we have the activity 14, which is traditional and group homes. There are two, the Whippoorwill and the Bird Springs. We rebid that project. We've had our site visits, and we are under due diligence from procurement, making sure that all the documents are in place for the participating bidders, and then we'll forward that to legal review. Okay, so that's the procurement activities for the month of June. And then we have in progress as far as construction projects for modernization. Those 10 units over in Chilchill has reached 41%. They're going pretty quick on that project, and they are predicted to finish before the winter sets in. We have 37 units over in Fort Defiance. They are at 45%. Those are also moving at a pretty fast pace. All the units have been closed in and ready for material work. And then we have 19 units over at High Public Rental. That's reached 13% as the month of June. They are also on a fast pace, so they should be finishing up here pretty quick. And then the next table there is all the taxes collected on active projects right now. You'll see the top table has to do with the design bill contracts, and the bottom table has to do with design bid bill, which is the traditional IFB process. So all the bond projects are in there on the bottom table, and then on top you have the solar street lights, you have the modular project, and then you have the Tuba City Road construction. So all in all, we've collected for the month of June $156,653.01 in June, and then for the total amount of the projects, we've collected $2.7 million.
That's a year-to-date number?
What's that?
That's a year-to-date?
Yeah, year-to-date number.
Is that from the actual?
That's from the start of the contract. That's just for these contracts.
Right, but as far as year-to-date, does that go back to our fiscal year, back to October 1, or does it go to January 1?
I can give that information, but this is just for these contracts that are listed from when the time we issued them and how much we agreed upon as far as the price.
Okay.
So, but I can give you the overall date from way back, from all the way back to from our fiscal year starting.
But what number is this?
This number is just for the contracts that are listed here.
To January 1st or to October 1st?
When these projects all started at different times,
Oh, okay.
so they're not all from one date. It's just
From whatever the time is.
Yeah, from the time we issued the contract.
Just as a follow-up, can you just let us know what the furthest contract back is, something like that, so we have an idea?
The furthest contract that we have is probably the Ojo Amarillo. That was what was submitted, that was actually issued last year. So that's pretty much the oldest contract we have
Okay,
there.
all right.
Yeah.
Just an
So,
idea.
but we do keep track of, from any fiscal year, we can tell you how much contracts, how much taxes we have. But this was just to show you what we have so far on active contracts.
Commissioner Lee.
To whom is the tax paid?
The tax is paid to the contractor, and then the contractor therefore passes that tax on to the tax commission. It's just like when you pay for something over at, like at the store, you pay the tax there, and then it's the responsibility of, I asked that question with tax commission people, and that's where they say it's a pass-through tax that they collect for them, and then they pass it on to them.
Do we ever pass these numbers along to the tax commission?
We do.
Just
So
wondering.
it's just to make, I was.
Seems like good
worried-
information to have.
Yeah, I was worried about that too, and I
Make
found
sure
out
the
that we
contractors
do,
are
yeah,
paying.
that we're not just paying the contractor taxes, it's going out of the buildings.
Yeah, okay. Any
Okay.
further questions? Go ahead, Mr. Frank.
Okay, then we have the UFAS project, we have 14 units that are spread out across the Navajo Nation, that we also are in a procurement packet, so that will be ready for the next board for approval. And that's just a retrofit, what they call retrofit, where they select houses out there that will meet what was that called? That agreement we had? That agreement, it's an agreement we have with the, with HUD that will have us 20% of our houses will be UFAS, VCA, that's what it was, VCA. And that's just to fulfill that agreement. So we are retrofitting houses, and this retrofit is to get the bathrooms in compliance, the hallways, doorways, the kitchen, all the common areas outside, making sure there's ramps in place and things like that. Everything goes, and it really turns into a mod project, because some of these houses selected have like problem with the roofs, problem with the windows, floor tiles, interior walls, exterior walls, things like that. So what we do is we go out and we do an inspection. That inspection turns into a scope of work. That scope of work is then bidded out for those sites. It's kind of like a scanner site project. So that's how that goes. So that went through the whole phase. We went through bidding, and we'll be bringing that contract for the board. New development, I think I went through those ones already. This one mainly has to do with the Bennett Freeze area. We have 15 units ready to go. We are setting up, we are making sure that the budgets are in place so that we can make sure that we can procure those documents. All the clearances are done, everything is done, all the utility routes have been established, we went through the right-of-way process, we've got releasing funds on every one of these. We have, and then we're going to have, not only to these 15, but we're going to have, I think it was 16 more that will be going, that's coming up the line now. Of course, the street projects over in Tuba City increased 37%. They're moving along pretty good. They still, their goal is to finish before the end of the fiscal year. So they'll have that done. We've received a lot of compliments from Delegate Odoso on this project. He's really glad that it's moving. And he also expressed that because of this work that NHA is doing, now BIA now wants to do the rest of those roads, or the rest of that road that's there to do. So that's kind of an incentive there for them.
Commissioner Lee.
I'm wondering, is there anything that's slowing up our process of construction at all? Are the budgets being put together quickly enough for your people to keep rolling along with the project developments?
I think one of the biggest holdups right now was our buyout program. We lost quite a bit of personnel in the procurement department and the legal department, which, they do all the due diligence and do all the legal reviews and things like that, and that really hindered our project. But now that HR was able to fill a lot of those positions, even their own HR department, they had that problem too. They were lacking personnel. I've seen them. I think they're full staff now. I think almost, yeah. So and then in our area too, For planning, the planning department, we only have 3 individuals there. We're still needing to fill 3 positions. So that's on its way. So we actually took some people out of construction management and put them over into planning just to balance that out and tell the projects, because they're the ones that are going to be pushing the projects forward, getting all the due diligence done, getting all the land documents, leasing documents, everything forward. So we moved some personnel from construction management just to get that done, and then once it gets into the bidding process and award, then we'll move those project managers back into their original positions so they can do the construction management.
How about your interaction with grants management?
Our interaction with grants management has really improved as far as how the IHP is developed and how it's being implemented right now. One of the things that our CEO brought up was the mapping. We did mapping. That was a request from our last meeting to make sure that we could show the vastness of where all these activities are happening across the Navajo Nation, and we were able to show that to the legislatures and to the executive personnel. Also, we came up with schedules so that those schedules coincide with all the activities that were mentioned in the IHP plan. So giving them that information, then they started to see the whole gamut of what we're doing, we're not just concentrating in one area and we're only doing things in one area. This is an effort across the whole Navajo Nation. So that made a big impact when we were presenting the IHP.
That's good to hear. It sounds like stars and bunnies.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's good.
Starting to move. So, and then with that, the next part of my presentation has to do with the 2 other divisions. One, maintenance. It's going to go over some highlights for the maintenance division. They've turned over 349 public rental units to various housing management offices. They continue to reinforce the use of the HD doorways mobile maintenance program. Yesterday we had a meeting with the developers and the maintenance supervisors, and we talked about the process, we talked about the workflow, we talked about how units are going to be initiated as far as the work order is concerned, who's going to accept the work, who's going to, how the building is going to go through, who's getting notified when these units are going to be ready for reoccupation or for just to do the building of the work order that's being done. So I got my first board report, or my first monthly report on this project since I took it over. So I'm going to be going over this. I'm going to be requiring this every month so that I can give an accurate account of what's actually happening out there. So what they do is they concentrate on 3 areas. They have occupation, finance, and maintenance, and all the issues that are being brought up by those 3 organizations, and then how they are providing solutions, and then also training on each one of those organizations as far as the implementation of doorways. And those 3 departments are what really is the backbone of HDS. So we're going to be pushing that. I've asked for workflows. I've asked for additional detailed information from them. And then we're also going to be looking at the actual IT infrastructure that's going to be supporting this whole effort. So that's kind of where, and maintenance, according to the programmers from and the instructors from HDS, said that maintenance has been very excellent in implementing the doorways, and then also pushing this implementation forward. So and then I also have Heather over there, over from housing maintenance, housing management. She has been going out to the sites and actually working with her housing managers so that they can also participate in how this whole thing is being implemented. So then, but that's one of our biggest things is due to and what I explained to them yesterday was that the communication between these three departments has to improve, because that's where we're going to be reporting back to HUD, all HUD findings. Anything that we are going to be going through is going to depend on how we implement this application, because they always look at tenant records, they look at maintenance logs, they look at all these different things that they always look at for us every year. So we want to make sure that the reporting requirements and how we're going to be providing documentation to HUD is going to be very important. Another thing that they've been doing is they've been going through a lot of the vacant PR turnovers, continue at the highest priority. That's still their highest priority. Right now, Arnie Volado is not here. He's actually across the street with his whole maintenance supervisors. They're doing what Mr. Lee called the maintenance Olympics. They're seeing who does the fastest drywall repair, who does the fastest electrical repair, plumbing repairs, things like that. They have kiosks out there. So if you have time to go out there and look at them, it's pretty interesting. So they're having a competition out there to see who's the best at doing certain things. So they have these little mock-ups that they're doing, and then they time them, and they are doing. And then they also quiz them on policies, workflows, things like that. So that's what's happening right now. That's where Mr. Willett was at. Okay. So with that, we can go over to Housing Management Division. One of the key things that I noticed in
The question from Commissioner Beguet?
Yes.
Before you go any further, under the maintenance division,
Yes.
it's reported that we have turned over 349 public units. And then as you go down, it says we was able to turn over 49 public rental units into housing management.
Yes.
I am confused with those totals there. Can you?
The one on top is when they started this program.
Uh-huh.
That's how much they've done total.
Okay.
And the one down at the bottom is what was done during the month of June.
Okay, the month, okay. So the total that were vacant in public is the 549?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And that goes up and down, but that number is going on. We're still working on the database. That's another thing that I wanted from HDS is the occupancy, like I said, the occupancy and how we're addressing that information.
A question?
Yeah, Commissioner Lee.
So in your dealing with, on this HDS issue, is the computer system going to operate smoothly then among finance and then housing, the occupancy you're talking about, and then maintenance? I mean, you're talking the three different areas that are sitting separated.
Yeah.
Is that software bridging the gap?
That's our goal, is to make it bridge the gap. That's why when I asked for this report, that's when they came up with that. Those are the three. And I asked, my question was, okay, when you do what initiates a work order in the first place? Where does it come from? Who does that information? Who starts the actual implementation? And then when you go out, and how do you determine the scope of work? And then you determine a budget, and you start your procurement. How does that happen with finance? And then how are you tracking that inventory so that when that material is purchased, we can track it from where we got it and then what unit was it actually applied to? And then how do we close the whole thing out? That was a big question about closeout and completion. And so what we found out yesterday was that a completion is when the actual work is done out in the field, and it's confirmed by the tenant saying that this work has been done, and they sign off. And then the closeout is actually the overall closeout, making sure that everything has been recorded, where the material went, how many labor hours were used for this work order, things like that. And then so that you get two different reports, one of what the tenant pays, because they don't pay for the whole the repair. They only pay for like whatever the maintenance policy. like for a window, they'll only pay like $15 or something like that. Well, when you look at the real numbers, it's not $15. It's like, like $100 and something dollars to actually go out and fix a window. So that's the kind of reporting that we're going to be looking at.
Okay. I asked the question because I recall a few meetings ago, Heather saying that she was completely left out of the process of the development of that software. And that's key. Are you involved now, or are things getting fixed, or what's going on?
Want to answer that?
It's already been implemented, so right now it's more of a communication with the HDS individuals, including Ms. Long. So I did meet with HDS briefly yesterday because I attended the maintenance meeting yesterday just to see what kind of issues they're having and how it's going to affect us on the opposite side, meaning that if they do a work order, how it's going to affect us. So that way I'm kind of in the loop of what's going to happen. So Arnie did, with the SOP, Arnie did send that through me. I did review it. I did have some comments and responses to that. So now it's more of a, I let HDS know I need to work with you because there's reports that I need to get. As far as training, that we are going to hopefully set that up. I'll be talking with my supervisor as far as the policy that we do every year, and I'm hoping to bring HDS in at that time for at least a 2-day training, just like maintenance. They're getting a 2-day training on the on the doorways, so I'm hoping we have that same opportunity to do that with Housing Management Division, which I think is very crucial.
How responsive has HDS been to our needs?
They are, based on my meeting with them yesterday, they're pretty responsive. I did express the need for housing maintenance to be, like you said, it's a three-legged stool. You take one of the legs away, it's going to tip over and fall. So you have to have all three of them working simultaneously, and that's what this report is going to be doing. And I told them, I want a report on all these three areas as far as how we're occupying it, which has to do with Heather, finance, it has to do with Kathy, and then maintenance, it has to do with Arnie. How all this, how the whole thing is being implemented, and how all everybody plays their roles, and how this is going to be done. So it's going to be, it's the turning over of units, getting the confirmation of work that's being done, and then the building requirements that go out.
Do you have a timeline on full integration?
I'm still doing my due diligence on the whole thing, gathering information, so I should have something more concrete at the next board meeting. I just barely got these reports, and I had a kind of email battle with them. They were kind of reluctant to give me a lot of information, but after Dwayne spoke with them, they kind of turned the whole 180 degrees on me. They started to cooperate.
Commissioner Lee?
Back to Heather, I mean, I still sense that you're not happy with your level of involvement. Does it need to increase so that the package can be utilized better?
I believe after yesterday's conversation, with directly talking with the HDS individuals, and they got to hear my concerns because I haven't been able to really express myself. I did let them know that I have concerns with reporting, as far as like what I report to the board. It's very hard right now because I would have to go to 15 sites and pull that information. So they're looking at putting a report together that has all this information every month. So they were able to sit down with me and go over that. So, which is beneficial. It's going to be good for me because right now it's taking a lot of time to pull these reports, and you can filter them, you can fix them. So if each HMO does it a different way, I won't be able to pull accurate information. So I'm asking them to write a report that has all the information I need so I can pull every month.
Then, are you getting feedback from maintenance and from finance that the information that you're going to have is going to satisfy them? Are you all interacting?
I can say I am with maintenance because Arnie's just right next door and he's doing the work orders right now. So he wanted my input. So that I am happy with because he wanted my feedback. Because right now what's happening is a work order is established, and what Ernest was talking about, the finished product is when the maintenance supervisor goes in there and enters everything. And once those charges are entered and they push the enter button, it hits
the tenant account, meaning the ledger. So if we don't know on our side at Housing Management Division what's going on with the maintenance, the customer comes back to us and then they'll say, well, you charged me this much. Why did you charge me this much? We weren't aware of that. So we have to communicate with each other as far as that and say,